For anybody to call anybody a liar is an awful, disgusting, sociopath, rapist, piece of crap. But here's a news story that just came out too. Okay, so here's another thing. Staffers sexually abused dozens of boys at a New Jersey detention center that state promised to shut down years ago. The New Jersey training school allowed a culture of abuse to play out over 5 decades. Yeah, so if you promote rape to women, you're going to rape boys, and boys are going to rape other people, and yada yada. That lovely cycle, right? And if you think about this, when you go back to the Indian school thing, what's different? Nothing. Nothing at all, right? Nothing. Nothing. And this was actually a bunch of Christians. Okay, so something else to identify in the story. So this was Christian ideology to set up this whole thing, right? And it's by the white men of Christianity, right? Because they're the head leaders, and so they want to control, this whole thing, right? So, and then to get it even more dissected, it's white male supremacist, right? So when you're reading this stuff, it's like I said, it's a lot of layered stuff, and there's no way in hell like I could sit there and do a 5 or 10 minute clip on this crap. It is so deep and layered and historic. Like there's a lot of history to it, and there's still a lot of history I'm learning from it because, of course, they did not teach us this stuff in school because you would not want to. And so then you go into this thing. They set up these things because the children were bad, right? The children are bad and they need to get the demon out of them, right? So their whole thing is to throw them in these systems, right? And correct the shit out of them by beating the crap out of them and turning them into a bunch of sociopaths. Like, seriously, that's how it's coming out. That's how come this cycle is going on. That's why I said when they brought up the racist part, I go, yeah, but you have to talk about like why somebody would be criminal, because you could, like, okay, there's a lot of things, like when you sit on this stuff, there's a lot of things I hate in the world, okay? But there's a lot of things I will not do just because I hate something, you know what I mean? I'm not going to go out and blow up a place or go, doing lynchings or, this additional action that you should just never do. So there was a lot of these additions in it, and I was like, yeah, because you couldn't just talk me into doing something like that because you have an ideology that you don't like such and such group, so you can't tell me as an adult randomly, oh, go and do this. So it was a deeper topic because I was like, oh yeah, you have to go into the portions where as a kid they're indoctrinated into a thing where they can manipulate and groom the kids into this like way of thinking. And then where they were abuse had to be on it because they're doing abusive behavior to other people in the addition. So it's not just a thing about just hate, because we could hate a lot of things. We hate this right here. But the deeper layered additions to it. So it took a long time to sit with it. And I go, okay, yeah, so the stem off, where did they come up with the, origin of, when you're looking at the slavery thing? Well, they didn't talk about human trafficking then, right? So the terminology wasn't used. And the language is always, women are beneath us. Okay, so that definitely was the origin. And then in the addition to having them as slaves, so then control and power. So it starts going into this thing. It definitely was not something that was like, oh, this is so easy to figure out. I was like, no, it's like 3 different topics together. It's like, you're talking about supremacy itself, right? Then you're talking about mental health stuff. Then you're talking about, mental health, that, and then how much they hate women, and all the other things, right? Racism and slavery. It's like all these different things, right? So it's not like, oh, just this one thing. And then you're looking back into, oh, and religion, right? So I was like, well, where is it coming from? Because you have to like identify the source of the spreader, right? Of like where that thing is coming from. And it was coming from that. And they still will not identify the language and how they're acting as the catapult to this type of crap, right? So it's a it wasn't something that was like so darn obvious. Like you knew this was going on. You knew they would say it's a man's world. This garbage, but there's a lot more to it than just that. But anyway, they created all these structural, reform, like just all this crap. But in it, they're all rapists, right? Because if you're a slave owner, you do not care about other people's agency, right? And if you tell women they can't vote, you don't care about their agency. And if you take over Indians and try to force them into your way, then you don't care about agency. And bringing people of color over against their will. You know what I mean? It's just all that, right? So they're rapists, right? Because they will say, they don't care what you say, yes or no, or what, any of that, right? So you're seeing that. So a rapist will always be in that thing right there. And so it's connected to that disorder, right? So it's pretty effed up, like the whole thing. So I go, we need to pull the reins on this because we know what it is now. Pull it, pull it. You know how to tackle it. You know the area to tackle. You can't correct it now, like them as adults, but you could go in and not keep spewing out that machine that's going on right here that's doing this. But 50 men, holy crap. Okay, so 50 men were sexually abused as boys by the staff in New Jersey's largest youth detention center, which allowed a culture of abuse to run rampant for decades. A lawsuit filed in the state Superior Court Wednesday. See, now something about this right here where everybody thinks, oh, they all came out like just these total victims and didn't harm anybody else. Actually, what's happening with it, and a lot of them, I'm not saying everybody, because, but a lot of them will reoffend and do those crimes on other people because it was when they were kids, they were told it was totally fine and they saw nothing wrong with it. And then it's kind of like this later topic where they're like, oh yeah, I was a victim. But you got to be careful with this because a lot of these ones that had that happen, they may also have allegations because that's actually been seen in I mean, to me, I almost think that most of them had been sexually abused in the mix anyway to begin with, to be going on like this. Just sit there and go, what? There's nothing wrong with some guy having me sleep in his bed as a kid. It's like, what the hell? Yeah, like this other thing. So, yeah, I think there was a lot of normalization with it. And the type of abuses that they did, the church, were actually really classified. They're classified as sexual abuses, such as spanking and that weird shit that they did where it's all creepy ass. It's like, give me your naked butt, kid. Some random guy. So they were doing this crap, and I think they're talking about decades here. So it's gonna go back into that era where like that they were trying to do that to me and I totally avoided it, and then other kids got it and it's not. So it goes, the allegations surrounding the state-operated New Jersey training school in Monroe Township dates back to the 70s. Okay, yeah, it's going to get bad. So with the most recent mention in the lawsuit stemming from the 2010s, the Associated Press said in the reports, for decades, children detained in New Jersey's juvenile detention facilities have suffered sexual abuse at the hands of guards, counselors, and other agents of the state, all while defendant had knowledge of and turning a blind eye to this culture of abuse. The dozens of plaintiffs alleged school employees raped them and forced them to undergo strip searches, then either bribed or threatened them to keep them silent about harrowing experiences. Yeah, that strip search thingy, yeah, that's always been a problem. It's just basically rape. I mean, we should not be, and they do it under the guise of, we need to make sure they're not hiding any weapons, but we're going to just totally rape you to do it. So, okay, says the lawsuit arrives after state officials announced in 2018 their intention to close the facility, which had long faced allegations of abuse, including from U.S. Justice Department. But those plans have not advanced as the state is still searching for other sites to house minors in its custody. Okay. The school currently houses approximately 200 people, most of them between the ages of 16 and 18, although residents range from 12 to 23. That's bizarre. Why would you have 12-year-olds with 23-year-olds? I mean, are they intermixed? That's scary. Okay, so On Thursday, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy committed to closing the school, while Attorney General Matt Plankin. Oh yeah, also by the way, like New York over there, they still allow raping kids. They're still not at 18 yet, so you know what I mean. Okay, so anyway, and the state would launch in swift and thorough investigation into the allegations raised in the lawsuit. Protecting the youth and the care of juvenile justice commissions is a matter of the highest priority for our administration. We have zero tolerance for abuse of any kind in the JJ facility or in the JJ sponsored programs. And then Moish or Marsh, I don't know, whatever, an attorney at Levy Kongsberg, who is representing the plaintiffs, applauded the commitment to shutter the facility when contacted by the AP. But that is not enough, he said in the email. The state, under his administration, should take responsibility for the decades of sexual abuse of children entrusted in its care and custody. Yeah, so where is it that they were ever against raping the kids? There's literally nothing in history that says they were anti-raping kids. Like, literally, I could pull up every case from even now, where they're sitting there telling kids that you wanted it and you deserved it and yada, you little slutty kids, and you're a bunch of liars, and you manipulated this adult man. And like this whole thing. And they've been doing this, and then so that's the culture, but we don't want to call it a rape culture because it's technically white male supremacist sociopath culture of Christianity. That's technically the actual thing because it didn't come outside of the doctrine. It's actually they're pulling in from the doctrine and actually going out from it, believing in the male head. So when you remove even if you remove like the religious portion, that's the pyramid scheme. So then they put white men on top, and it wouldn't matter if it doesn't matter who they put on top. That's supremacy. So you're talking about that type of pyramid thing. And yeah, it's freaking crazy. But anyway, that was the manipulative scheme. And so then the other thing that I'm saying on this other thing that's like infuriating is that they had knowledge about what was causing the mental illnesses. And so mostly the people in that field, right? So they study the field, they look at the causations, and blah, 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 blah. But in the causations, it's saying like all these abuses, right? And then if you're coming from a family that's like this overly religious, militant family, all these different things, right? So they had it. And then also racist, right? So the racism when they're starting to abuse kids and they're racist and all these other things, right? And then being like a part of slavery or anything like that. It caused mental illness in a bunch of those people, right? As it would, because you're being abused. And then they cause mental illness in rape victims, right? So then they get PTSD, whatever. So then they cause the main fuel of that sociopath thing, where that came from child abuse. And so they could be layered on top of those things. And those are the people that go out and they're capable of doing this. And so then they kind of repeat that cycle right there. And then the addiction problem comes in play into that, and then they try to use that as an excuse as to why they're like a racist rapist, and they go murder people or whatever the hell it is because of their addictions, using it as an excuse why they beat up their wife. You know what I mean? They start doing this thing. You start seeing that, and so it's like all this stem off of this, and then they started. The thing that was disgusting about it was that these white men were degrading Native Americans for them having those mental illnesses because they were saying, oh, you have no room to talk, you go beat up all your women and kill them all, or something like that. They were saying some bullshit like that. And it's like, while everybody's part of the problem, the original thing was they came in and took over them and harmed them and took them away from their families and then caused all this like chaos and emotional distress and mental illnesses and depression and, screwed up their land. You know what I mean? You start going into this other thing and like they're too stupid to, like they're just evil like to say something like that. But I read this online and I'm like, wow, so you're just seeing the white male supremacists going on like that, and they will abuse, and they will continually abuse and abuse and abuse. But if you go into their background, the one that's acting like that, their childhood is riddled with massive abuse like this. And then so they just normalized it and they don't even care. And then they go harm other people. That's their normal behavior. It's fucking crazy. I go, no, see, we know the problem now. I was like, we don't, it's like we know the problem, and it's like they need to target it in the proper way. Parents need to be getting arrested for that type of crap. And if you start telling kids that they're evil demon seeds, that was another thing. I was like, even if the kid, because it was in that Harvard case, the other one I was about to bring up, but the guy, okay, when he was a kid, obviously, he's kind of beyond the point of correction, I think, at about by 14. But you don't know, and you don't want to sit there and continually tell a kid who's been abused or feels neglected or any of these things, like, you're a bad seed. You don't want this kid. Don't take this kid. He's what do they say? What was the other one? Bad seed, evil something. They said something. I go, you do not tell a kid that. Like, I mean, I might sit there and talk about these kids being evil and stuff, but you don't tell a kid that. And then you're like, don't take that kid. I mean, okay, so then all it does is layer on more things onto that kid, that he's unwanted, he's evil, he's just born this way. And so then I noticed in the serial killer cases where that was happening, because that same thing was happening, then they get mad, you know what I mean? Because nobody loves them. They don't care. They hate the world because nobody likes them. And they keep saying this stuff. So then they go and want to kill everybody. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, if you were treated that shitty, I mean, you can kind of see, you could kind of start to see the reason. It's not good reasoning, but you could start to see where that reasoning is coming in. And yeah, they were doing that. So because they were all Christian, they were saying everybody's a demon and they're controlled by the devil. And they were still doing this in our childhood, saying shit like that. And God came to punish the gays, and that's why they all died off. And oh God, every time I go back to the era, it's like massively abusive. It is just, it was like, no wonder, like, I didn't like anybody. I was like at that point, because it was just like everybody's saying that everybody's Satan, though the actual population was, the majority was Christian. So how are you all Satan? I mean, you know what I mean? And then they started making up that damn demon cult crap with kids, and it was actually them molesting their kids, right? It was actually them. It was a flip flop. Like, they were trying to, I think the whole thing is that they were the ones doing it, and then they try to blame the devil for them molesting kids or something. And I don't know. Like, but then when they interviewed all the kids, I was saying how odd this is, because they all were molested, I'm sure. But when they interviewed the kids, or asking them, were you part of some cult thing that they're making up, right? They started making up something that wasn't going on, right? And the kids are like, no. It's like, why? I mean, you're not going to answer it properly as a kid, because it's like you're asking them something else that didn't even occur. But if you turned around and go, okay, did your parents ever, like, have you take your pants down and do some crazy shit? And then they might go, oh yeah, this whole other thing. But they didn't go on like that. That's what I'm saying. I go, and it would be almost highly impossible that they pulled out 50 kids and spoke with 50 kids and none of them got molested. None of them got touched, nothing. That would be highly impossible. That did not happen. So I was like, yeah, the line of questioning and the way they were angling it, because they were making up the cult thing, that those kids didn't answer, and they didn't know how to answer because that wasn't a topic, because they purposely kept them uneducated on what those sexual abuses are. And sexual abuse could happen in a numerous ways. And like the spanking thing, we've been talking about that, and they finally are starting to tackle that. I go, yeah, it's actually causing sexual problems in some older adults. There was a number of things with that where they're like, oh, we're all fine because of it. I go, well, I'll tell you, you're not. I was like, it may not harm somebody else if you're just doing it with adults, but the thing is that they're doing that with other kids, and then with a lot of them, it is a sexual behavior, and so then it's used as a cover to catch some kids, and that's a major thing. And they didn't really go real deep into that Duggar documentary where they were doing that. And I was like, that's so disgusting. The guy's like, do somebody hand me your little boy, send him up here. And then someone just gives them their kid. And then they're laughing at it. And I'm like, the guy's like, I really like it. And then he starts hugging him and he's like, I'm doing it out of love, you know what I mean? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to throw up. Like, they don't see anything wrong with this, all of them. And I did. The craziest thing on that story is that I totally knew when I was a little tiny tot. There was something about it that I was like, this guy wants to do something that's not right to me, and I'm not going to let him touch me, and I'm not even going to let my parents do that anymore. They did it like one time, or maybe they did it more than once, but I have a memory of like this one time they did this bullshit, and I go, oh, you're never doing that to me again, ever. Ever. And then, yeah, and then it pissed them all off. And then, so, but no, I didn't let him. And so then, yeah, but the pastor thing, no, he was a pervert. He was trying to do something. I knew there was something wrong with it. But I was too little to tell you like what I knew was wrong with it. I was like, this is disgusting. He's like, I can't wait to get to your butt. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that right there, a little kid will pick up on. That's not right. That's about as far as you can go with it. And then as an adult, you look back and you're like, oh, dude, that guy was going to try to molest me, dude. That was the shit. But you didn't know. Like, how are you supposed to know at that age? You just don't know. You just know, something's kind of wrong here. And I wasn't a dumb kid. That was another thing. So I guess the other kids were just oblivious. And they're like, all right, I don't know. But I was like, there's no way. But he asked, he's like, I'm going to call your dad and get permission. And I was like, you're going to legitimately try to get permission from my parents to do it? I guess that's a way the perps can get away with it. They're just like, let's see if the parents let me do it. And then, and they okayed me, That's the worst thing about this, because if there was even a chance to correct like a kid with that disorder, it was impossible. Like, I was looking at this and I go, well, you can't correct it by more abuse on the kid. That's number one. And so when I was looking at this, I go, yeah, so I mean, if you had that thing there and there's no cure for it at this time, I go, maybe it's just a matter of because of what they're doing, right? To try to, because they're not really correcting it. They're actually making it worse. And no, you don't want to cuddle them, but you don't want to abuse them more and do this thing, because this is like, it's just reinforcing and being more abusive, and then it's just this thing, and then it makes it so it's just permanent, right? Because you wouldn't have normal emotions after that. It's just a thing about it. And I was looking at it, and because I'm looking at what's the cure. Is there a cure? There's got to be some way to correct it, I mean, we don't know right now, but as I was looking at it, I go, yeah, there's a lot of things though in it where it's making it worse. I see. I don't know. Like, I have an idea of like where to tackle it. And then is the further portion of it, you have to stop the messaging. The messaging has to stop, because if the messaging is still there, then forget it. They can't be drilling that into kids that young. You cannot be doing that shit. You can't be telling them emotions are bad. Why are they're turning them straight up into socios? Like, they're literally like turning them into it. Like, it's like an addition where it's not even just like, oh, we're just like neglecting the kid, but there's additions in it where they're feeding them information, and then it's so unhealthy. It's like this just combo of things, and I'm like, well, they have to stop that. They have to stop all these other things, and then the gun thing will just fall with it. It's not even. It's a thing about their mindset, and those things will come down along with the racial thing, all along with the other stuff, right? So it's all that's the main thing right there in that section right there. So I don't know. There's a lot of research that needs to be done. They look at what they're doing. I mean, when you read this right here, it's like a shit. No wonder a whole tank of serial killers came out of the 70s. Like, god damn, like, you look at it, It's like, oh, they just abused the shit out of the kids, and then they threw them into this thing, and then they started sexually abusing them and beating the crap out of them, and then they were like all out there, and they hate women because they were raping the shit out of all of us, all over the place, and degrading us, wouldn't let us work, and just and calling them feminine, whatever they were doing in this portion, and then yeah, and you look at it and you go, oh well, shit, no wonder, that definitely would come out, and then the old, like, the old slavery law, like there was a lot in it. It was just like the poverty thing, the class thing that goes along with it. But this problem right here actually has no class. It doesn't care. Like you could be rich, poor, anything, and they were all coming out the same way. It didn't matter your IQ. It didn't matter whether you did drugs or not. It didn't, all those different things. It didn't matter if you were white, black. It didn't matter. It was like it still affected them all in the same way. So it wasn't like limited to only one group of people. And I was looking at that, I go, that's crazy. That thing is crazy. And or gender, because females, got it too. So then, not necessarily in the way that men did, because they're still not the top tier of being murderous, this thing, but they're there. But yeah, and they're kind of the helpers, like they're more of the helpers, like they'll throw me into getting harm from a whole bunch of people, and yeah, it's all in there. It's all in there, you guys. And this is the area that you want to go into, and it's the area that they hidden, right? The kids. And now another question in this thing, what you don't understand is that they went into a youth detention center. So there was something at the house in their home life in the early portion here, which then led them into this. It's like a secondary thing, right? So it's not even the root of the child's problem. It's like the secondary layer of abuse, and then they got into this. Now, I don't know on these 50 men if they can explain like the initial thing that got them into here, and then that'll give you even more insight because it's something prior, and then they didn't. The parents never get busted. Like there was a whole thing in this. Like the parents never got busted. They probably beat the crap out of a whole other thing, and then maybe they did some like kid crime of, I don't know, their behavioral things. Okay, so then they go throw them into here, and then they get re-abused. And so there's that you can't cure that. I mean, how are you even going to try to cure that? Like the whole thing is that you should be somewhere that's nurturing, not cuddling, but nurturing, like, trying to help the situation and trying to work through like what the earlier things were. And then and no abuse at all, because the worst thing you could do is add more abuse to that. But that's what they did. And they're not going to come out right. They're going to always go back in the system, back in the system. It's going to do this thing. And maybe all those 50 guys did that. I don't know. I think you'd have to line them up and take a good look at everybody's history there. Forgiveness solves nothing. It does nothing for me. That's a religious doctrine thing. And no, it doesn't make any of this better. It doesn't do goddamn thing. And no, even when they start doing that crap, they still are not fine. The thing that does make me feel better, I'll tell you. I was saying, when I overpower the monster, right? So when you overpower the criminal that did this crap. But the other thing in that is trying to stop one less monster in the world and trying to tackle this issue and not create any more. I think that did a lot. I mean, because it was like at the intro of this, as you're trying to seek justice, which we still deserve, which that's another thing. Male supremacists do not think we deserve a damn thing. Not money, not justice, not freedom, nothing. They still don't. But that's what we deserve. But second is stop creating them, because the way they view this is so ridiculous. They think that you only get harmed one time in life and that's the end of it. No, as you see in our story, we have thousands of perpetrators, okay? And in numerous ways, through my job, through, this other thing, and, just general gender violence. That's a daily thing. And so what you're looking to do is stop that cycle and stop creating those monsters. That's really the thing, right? And so the more you could go down to the perpetrators that harmed you and really dissect them, which I don't think they ever have. I think it's like a thing where they look at them, they try to talk to them, but they're pathological liars, okay? So they'll tell you that they're sorry for doing this and that, and they're not, okay? For the most part, they're not. It's just not in them. So you're asking for them to feel something that they cannot feel. They just don't care. And so they may give you a fast one and be like, I'm really sorry I did all this, and I should have never done it. I'm trying to fight for my freedom, my freedom. Yeah. So for the most part, once in a while you might get those ones where, they did something really stupid one day and it's not their typical behavior. It depends, but you have to be careful of these people. But the whole thing is that new ones are created every day. So even if you throw that guy in prison, tomorrow I have a chance to get another one. And that is the cycle there. And so I'm not safe. I'm still alive. Every day that you're on this planet, you still can run into another one and still have it happen again and again and again and again. And so the point here is that you could feel empowered by trying to stop that. And stopping that isn't making a death penalty for any of these people, really. It really doesn't. Because as you notice, a lot of them, because they like to harm others and self, that them getting told that they're going to be put to death, it really doesn't matter. Because a lot of them are kind of suicidal in their own way. They just don't care. Because if you're sitting there running like 100 miles per hour on a freeway and you don't care if you're going to crash into anything, they don't care. So the threat of that doesn't really matter. It may matter in the sense of like if it can cause more murders if they know that if they get caught doing that crime, that they will get put to death. So then, therefore, they may choose to kill somebody so they don't get caught, like literally in that way, because people are objects. So they don't necessarily need to be a serial killer to do that, but they may do it for the sake of not coming, going back to prison. So then they push this situation where the socio that doesn't care about anybody anyway may start murdering somebody, like another kid like that. So then it won't matter. So they may be pushing that. And yeah, but it doesn't solve anything. It's like, what are we doing? It's like, okay, well then you put him to death and then there's about 20 more coming, That's the thing about it. And that's why I was like, yeah, we gotta switch gears here. Like, how do we dig down on what the problem is with it? Because I knew how to pick them out. But it was kind of like, okay, now we should probably look at, now that I can pick them out all day long, it's kind of like, well, what is the cause of it? And then, so if we know the cause of it, then we really should be tackling that. The gun thing is a joke. Like, the gun thing will fall off when you tackle this. Like, I'm telling you, because it's a thing where it's the mindset about all of this that has to do with that. And that equation of male to their masculinity, like that thing in there is in there. There's a lot in it. So, mind you, I don't think anybody should have a gun. I was like, I just don't. But it would be absurd to ask for right now in this state of the world, because you would have to have everybody on board, like we're all nonviolent. That's just not going to happen. So, I mean, in some way, they have to protect themselves from certain things. But as time goes on and you keep chipping at that block, maybe one day they will get there. Not today.